Mr. Sensenbrenner for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, General Lynch, for being with us today. You are in charge of the Department of Justice. The buck stops with you. And I'm concerned that you keep on saying that you have deferred the authority that by law is yours to Director Comey. Let me give an example. Mr. Comey has said that Secretary Clinton was extremely careless in her handling of highly classified, very sensitive information. Now, the criminal statute uses the word gross negligence. And I can't for the life of me figure out what the difference between gross negligence and extremely careless is unless one really wants to parse some words. Now, secondly, the misdemeanor statute does not require intent. It's a strict liability statute, and it relates to the removal and retention of classified information. So it doesn't matter whether Secretary Clinton had the intent to do that or not. The fact is that the FBI said that she did it. Now, I think that what Director Comey has said is that Secretary Clinton's actions essentially meet the definition for prosecution under the statute. Why did you defer to Director Comey when the responsibility is yours?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. Let me be clear that my decision was to accept the recommendation of the team of agents and investigators who worked on this. And these are the career attorneys, as well as the dedicated investigators, including the FBI director, who worked on this matter for over a year. They've reviewed the facts, they followed the facts, they looked at the law, they've applied the facts to that law, and came up with a unanimous recommendation, a joint recommendation, in effect, that was provided to me.
I have a limited amount of time. You know, the fact is that whether it's extremely careless or gross negligence and a strict liability statute, I think that the language of the statute is clear. Now, I've noted that the Justice Department over the last several years has prosecuted several servicemen for doing the exact same thing that Secretary Clinton did. In one case, I actually reached a judgment of a court that prohibited that serviceman from ever having a security classification again. Now, you have a problem, Madam Attorney General, that people think that there's a different standard between the servicemen and Secretary Clinton, and the fact that the language is almost synonymous, if not synonymous, saying no prosecution of Secretary Clinton and prosecution and conviction of the servicemen. You have a burden, I think, to convince to the American public that you don't have a double standard. You're not meeting the burden, and how do you plan to change the argument that you make to the American public so that they can be convinced that the thing was correct and that you made the right decision, rather than simply deferring to people in the FBI and prosecutors?
Congressman, every case stands on its own separate facts and the application of those facts to the law. So you'd have to refer to the specific facts of the other matters that you're referring to. With respect to the investigation into the former secretary's handling of classified information, her private email system, again, I can tell you, and this entire committee and the American people, that all of the relevant facts were considered, investigated thoroughly, and reviewed by the entire team, which again is composed of career independent investigators as well as lawyers, and their recommendation upon a full and thorough analysis was that the matter be resolved in the way in which it was recommended to me. As I've indicated, I determined to accept that recommendation and did in fact accept that recommendation.
One final question. One of the service people who was prosecuted basically sent an email out that his fellow Marines were in danger. And he ended up getting prosecuted for warning his fellow Marines that their lives may be in danger. Now, here in the case of Mrs. Clinton, the private email arrangement was simply to avoid public scrutiny. So in terms of the intent of Major Jason Bresler and Secretary Clinton, one, Major Bresler, was doing it to save his colleagues. The other, Secretary Clinton, was to avoid transparency. Now, in terms of the bottom line, that's the hoop that you have to jump through in order to retain and regain your credibility with the American public. I hope that you'll be able to do that. Now, I yield back.